All right. And I think we're live here. Hey, Ryan, how are you?
Good. How are you, Nick?
Doing well, man. I appreciate you taking some time to talk to me. I feel like I was thinking yesterday, I think we've known each other for about 20 years now.
Yeah, it's been one of my oldest friends for sure. Yeah, I think maybe even before high school.
Oh, definitely,
Yeah,
definitely.
for sure, right? Yeah,
And I think we've hit that age where we can actually say big date ranges like 20 years and not be joking ourselves.
I know it's crazy.
Well, before we get into introductions, I want to play a little game with you. This has nothing to do with what you're doing now, but as I think back to my memories with you, this is one of my memories: is playing a card game um, in math class, and it's the game 24. You know
Oh
what that is?
shoot, yeah.
All right, so we're gonna go head to head here and see who can get this first. And maybe we'll do two. We'll see how bad I am. Can you
And
see
do we
it?
just say like stop or go once we have the solution?
Exactly. Yeah.
All right,
So I'll skip this, and let me know if you can see that. Okay.
I got
Got
it.
it. Oh.
Yeah, it's a 20 on top. You add them together, and then 5 minus 1 is 4. Plus them together, 24.
Oh, you got me there. All right. We'll do two more.
All right, let's do it. I didn't be thinking we'd be doing math this early in the morning, but all
I
right.
know. I know.
Yeah.
I've been warming up this morning.
And they always have to have a solution? This one? Oh,
They
I got
say,
it.
oh, you got it? I don't have
Yeah.
it.
So it's 7 times 3 is 21 plus 10 minus 7 up top is 3. Add them together, 24.
Oh, dang. All right. Last one. Last one. This is getting embarrassing here for me. Oh, got it.
Nice. What is
Maybe
it?
I don't. No, I don't.
Okay. Well, I don't have any.
Oh, yeah. 19 plus 5 is 24 times 1
Times
is
1.
24.
Nice. Yeah, there we go.
Whew. I had to get one there.
Well, shoot,
That's
we played this with cards, I'm pretty sure, right? We didn't play it using these. I remember
they,
playing this stuff with a deck of cards.
yeah, there's no internet back then.
That's right.
And so we played deck of
Just
cards, sit in a
floppy disks and
circle.
stuff.
That's one of my early memories of you is getting my butt beat in 24.
Man, that's a throwback for sure.
For all my Shake Rag Elementary lums there.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Yeah, seriously.
I love it. Well, Ryan, let's do this. You want to quickly introduce yourself for the audience, for those that don't know you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Ryan Yan, and Nick, as you mentioned, we went to I'll do the fast version: Shake Rag, River Trail, Northview. I then went to Georgia Tech. I studied business administration, and then I during my last couple of years, I interned for Deloitte, took a full-time job there, did consulting for about 2 years, and then went to do uh, operations management at a company called McMaster-Carr Industrial Supply. Did that for about 4 or 5 years, and then got my MBA at Kellogg concurrently. Was doing that crazy thing where I was flying from Atlanta to Chicago every weekend just to maintain full-time status of working. And then near the end of my MBA, I went over to JBN Consulting, which is where I'm currently at. And that is kind of the more stepwise, logical progression of my business career. But of course, I'll kind of let you ask the questions on the art side whenever appropriate. But I have a huge passion for creating and painting, and that continues to be a passion in my life.
Yeah, no, I love that. And so, what I want to do with kind of our conversation today is just understand your journey a little bit more.
Sure.
Understand kind of, what got you into consulting, kind of that interest, and some of the what you've learned in the business here. I recently moved back into consulting, so maybe I can steal some tips and tricks from you. And then want to really dig into kind of the art side of your life and spend a lot of time there. and hoping you can educate me a little bit and understand, also how you think about art from a business standpoint,
Sure.
and what folks maybe don't see from an Instagram photo, and what that really looks like here. So as we jump into this, Ryan, would love to understand kind of your journey coming out of Georgia Tech and going into Deloitte, like what you did there. We have a lot of folks who listen to this podcast who are maybe newer, younger in their career, and just maybe talk about your experience in one of the big four, and maybe the type of projects you worked on, and what that life looked like.
Sure. So let me kind of start at Georgia Tech. I was very fortunate to be coming out of Northview to be awarded a Stamps Leadership Scholarship, and I promise I'll get to consulting here. So my first couple of years, one is I went to Georgia Tech feeling an enormous amount of gratitude from the scholarship, and one of my mentors that I met was from so he was the president of the Filipino Student Association. We were part of our own like this hip hop dance group. He kind of mentored me, and he was also a stamp scholar at Georgia Tech, and he had interned for Accenture, I think, quite a few times, and was getting ready to go to Accenture full time as he was graduating. And so he kind of let me know that there was a student consultant position open for the Stamps Foundation. And I thought this was like the perfect way for me to, one, give back, but also two, it's just like, shoot, I get to learn about consulting and what that's all about. And so I started doing that. And, we were tasked with two things, essentially. One was expanding the program, and then two, kind of providing the student perspective of things, being the eyes and ears of the foundation itself. And so this really piqued my interest in just solving business problems in general, what business was kind of all about. And I was able to take that experience. I applied to a few internships, one of which was Deloitte during my sophomore year. And then I was over the moon, ecstatic that I got that internship because one, at this point in time, do I really understand what consulting means? No. Do I even understand what consulting means today? I'm getting a little bit better, but
Yeah.
I think you could definitely empathize with that. But so I did that. It was kind of more about, I get to travel. I get to, get exposure to these big companies. And honestly, it was just like, it was a way for me to explore kind of what I'm interested in while having bragging rights, so to speak, with my friends and buddies of like, we get to go travel. We get to go see and do these things. And that kind of carried over my junior year. And then, when I started full time, that's when things got a lot more serious, right? Because at that point, they're no longer trying to, per se, sell you on the dream. Like, of course, that still exists. You're still traveling and you're still able to work different client problems, but you're expected to add a lot of value, given your bill rates and et cetera. And so I was able to work on a variety of different projects at Deloitte, starting from a health plans company to a pharmaceutical company, mostly on the tech strategy side of things, where, honestly, what did that mean as an analyst? For me, frankly, I'm developing analytic skills via Excel, developing presentation ability, storytelling via PowerPoint as a tool. The actual designation of what function I was playing is probably less important. I would say I'm not like so aligned to like an SAP offering or like an Oracle offering. It was definitely kind of more generalist, and that'll be kind of a hallmark throughout my career, I believe, at least my career thus far.
Yeah, that's awesome. I similarly, started my career at Accenture, and kind of coming out of the gate, I applied just on a whim. No one recruited me out of Georgia State or anything. I applied on a website, and somehow someone reached out to me.
Amazing. Yeah.
But similarly, out of school, traveling a lot, living kind of that analyst life, doing configuration, making a presentation, kind of just absorbing what it means to be a consultant and how to deliver for clients. So I found a lot of those early years very formative and kind of important, as well as kind of the managers I had along the way. Did you have any managers that stuck out for you?
Yeah, definitely. I remember thinking, and again, like I will erase my ego as we talk through this, but I was pretty hot-headed when I joined. I was like, shoot, Deloitte wants me to work there, and I know how hard the pipeline actually is, and I was humbled very quickly, I would say, where where they're like, oh, Georgia Tech grad, you have consulting experience from our internships. You should be able to knock out these Excel problems pretty easy. And man, I struggled. It was difficult. And it wasn't even hard stuff. It was like, if you knew how to do some like remove duplicates and some index match and like be able to just basically clean up a data set, it wasn't complicated things. But, I had mentors who were really patient with me. Now that I'm on the other side where I have people on my team, and kind of experiencing, if I had me on my team, my younger version of me, it would have been difficult because, they basically showed me kind of keystroke by keystroke of like how to solve these problems and how to think through processing data in Excel from like a very basic inputs to get it where it's at a point where you can actually transform it to make something of it, to drive a single insight. And so certainly, I think I would be nowhere without the patience of a few people who were like, I'm dedicated in getting the most out of this resource, but two, just like took a personal interest on how I can develop. So that was at Deloitte. And then of course, moving on forward from that, there's plenty of figures who, beyond the let's say more technical side of things, have been formative in my business career thus far.
Yeah, no, that's great. So working through Deloitte, get promoted, kind of go through that path a little bit, and you eventually decide to leave Deloitte to go to McMaster Carr. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
And so, even as I was going through my career, and you kind of make that jump to leave consulting and maybe go industry, or even leaving your first job, like what was kind of that decision process look like for you? Were you recruited? Were you looking? Can you talk a little bit about how you made that decision?
Yeah, so it was about about 2 years into Deloitte where I had startup fever and dreams of
Familiar.
yeah, like just like, whoa, what am I doing? I'm like spending all my time moving boxes in PowerPoint or like solving these. Like I was dreaming in Excel for a while, and I was like, I gotta be able to break free from this, but also, is this really what I have to offer for this world? And I was at the time, I'm really struggling with some mental health things, and so I was thinking like, what is kind of the solution for me always either living in the past or not feeling really happy about my present, and we can go deeper than that, but long story short is I figured that one of my biggest symptoms was I felt like I was so isolated and alone. I didn't want to bother any of my friends. I didn't want to bother my parents. I didn't, it was all very kind of up in my head. And so I had a eureka moment that, I cannot possibly be alone, and that empathy helps a whole lot when somebody's going through this. And so I formed a team, Alvin, who
Yes.
and some other very brilliant developers, and we tried to do something called Project Sync, which is an application here to making you feel like you're not alone going through a struggle. And so we were trying to develop this application. We went through Create X, which is an accelerator program at Georgia Tech, and I was doing this all kind of while I was at Deloitte. And
so you're at Deloitte and you're launching a startup.
I used like all my vacation time to try to go do this, and like just I was so dedicated to this. I was spending my nights and weekends to try to get this thing off the ground. And so yeah, at the same time, McMaster was calling me. I was kind of exploring that as an option. If everything completely doesn't work out, or if my co-founders end up saying, we're not going to go do this full time with you, because they were all they were all doing this on the side as well, and they're really brilliant people working for huge tech companies.
Working at the FANG of the world, and
exactly, and so. Yeah, things kind of fizzled out on the startup side of things, where we kind of quickly realized, one, we're too. This is where I would call it mental health was not really a part of the cultural zeitgeist. It wasn't as like we can't. It was not as easy to talk so openly about it as it is today. But yes, so McMaster called. They offered a couple of things that made a lot of practical sense. So one was you get to come through this management rotational program where you get to learn about the operation, manage a team pretty quickly, and then plus they have they invest in their people so much. And so
Mhm.
one thing that they do is for any employee, there's a really great educational benefits. I took advantage of that. They let me know that you can get an MBA. Plenty of people do this. So a lot of things made sense. I had no direct kind of straight line, solid line reporting relationships at Deloitte. I wanted to
Yep.
understand what leadership was kind of really about. And so I knew McMaster could offer a lot of that. And so I took the offer after kind of the startup was starting to implode.
Got it. Yeah. And so moving, well, first off, I can relate on starting a project to start it with friends and kind of chasing it till its natural conclusion. And, maybe the market's not there, maybe it's too early, maybe it's not the right team. Or big thing I found is, and I'd love your opinion, is maybe it's just not the right fit for you personally. And if you're going to start, a business or, trying to chase the startup dream, you got to really care about it enough for at least 5 to 7 years. And if it's something you think of overnight and chase it down, it just you might not have the passion for it to care about it long enough. Have you found that?
Yeah, totally. I think passion itself is not enough. At least that's what I found is the passion was certainly there. It was a genuine care. And then I think the thing that was missing for me was that momentum of constant wins. And so
Yeah.
um, perhaps you can trade off sometimes passion for small wins and it can sustain you for a while. But for me, it became to a point where it was unsustainable for my life. And plus the fit wasn't there necessarily. Yeah, genuinely, maybe not for me, but certainly it wasn't there also for my co-founders at a certain point in time,
Mm,
right? And so when you feel like you're dragging people along because they've got frankly at this point in time better things to do, and you're kind of at this point trying to pursue a vision without that necessary momentum, then it just didn't make sense necessarily to pursue it with the level of gusto and the dreams that we thought when we came into it with.
yeah, no, definitely. It becomes taxing to pull people along. And at a certain point, let's explore something else and give yourself a mental break because this is totally optional. This is something you're choosing to doing.
Yeah, exactly.
So real quick, let's talk about McMaster. And you talked kind of an operational leadership role. What does that really look like? What does that mean in practical terms? I think it's a manufacturing company, right?
They're a distribution company, so they don't
Okay.
manufacture their own products, but their value prop is essentially they can send you very niche products to very widely usable products um, to essentially all the way from mom and pop stores all the way to your big manufacturing plant. So like if you imagine if you're like a candy manufacturer, like one of the big ones, and your conveyor goes down, like that's capacity that's wasted, right? Those are dollars lost. And essentially Master is able to send you those onesies and twosies same day, next day, etc. And from that they're able to command pretty high margins because the service is just really there.
Mm,
So my roles varied. I did everything from distributions, operations management, where I was there overseeing a packing line where my team is able to essentially take items, put them in a box, but in a manner that there's a lot of like science and thought that goes into it. Where how do I ensure that this delivery goes without any damage, that it's arrivable, it's presentable, and it's done very quickly with a high degree of quality. And so, kind of taking those principles, I've done things on the inbound side. I've done, customer service operations where you're measuring kind of like the inbound quantity, volume of calls, and ensuring that representatives are able to respond uh, to an inquiry, an order in very few rings, of the phone. And of course, you're overseeing the quality by listening to phone calls or pushing customer service to the next level by suggesting to your management team or even upper management of here are the things we can do to improve a customer outcome. And so we were laser focused on serving the customer. And so every single micro action that you can imagine in the operation, from the hands-on point to the management of it, and so on and so forth, we're all kind of bent towards that customer.
got it. It almost sounds in a sense still consultative internally though.
Oh yeah.
You're the SWAT team that comes in and, helps things run smoother. Is that right?
That is a huge component of it. It is, you're spending, like if you're at the supervisor manager level, so at a supervisor, you've got a team, so they all report to you, you're writing their reviews, you've got significant influence over, if they're ready for the next level, what kind of, merit increases they might get. But, so you have direct management responsibilities, and it feels like that. So that's one. Two is ensuring the operation continues. So that's a big component. But the third thing, and that's where the internal consulting piece comes through, is how do you improve the outcomes of operation? How do you improve the outcomes of the team? And so that requires some deep problem solving, including things that are very hallmark to a consultant as well.
That's awesome. I love kind of the diversity of experience, and not just doing one thing, but starting to gain skills in other areas, and being able to adapt kind of so far in your career here. So with that, Ryan, you did that for about 4 or 5 years, decided to pursue your MBA at the same time. And I remember, we caught up a few times during that. Very taxing as you pursued that full time, in addition to, working kind of a very demanding schedule. Can you talk about that period in your life there, and, how you balanced, if at all, kind of, personal life and work?
Yeah, the balance was tough. I won't lie. I think I was very grateful for the opportunity that I was in, which was, my employer will sponsor my education so long as I'm working full time. And so I tried to pursue what's, Kellogg for a lot of reasons made a lot of sense. It's very teamwork focused, very collaborative, and the brand kind of speaks for itself. So now to get that, what it meant was every weekend, so every Friday, I'd fly out from Atlanta. I land pretty late in Chicago. I find some hotel, sleep, wake up super early the next morning, go to class all day, and then Saturday night I'd fly back. Yeah, and I did that for 2 years. So it was tough. I mean, I think every single form of health took a hit, if I'm being very real. My mental health definitely was like, work is challenging, sometimes in a good way, sometimes not in a good way. Class was hard too. I'm used to being mostly a straight A student through Georgia Tech, but that level one is the talent curve at Kellogg is pretty high, and to get an A was for some people may be easy, but for me, shoot, either out of not enough intelligence points or not enough grit to do it, and just being tired in general. It was not easy to kind of keep up really solid grades. So I would say a lot of good memories with my classmates going through class. The professors were world class. I was mind blown. I was really happy to learn. But a lot of it was tough too, because I was newly married at the time. My wife was very patient with me in terms of, well, shoot, I mean, I'm kind of gone for Friday and Saturday. When I come back Sunday, I'm kind of focused on doing homework. Then throughout the week, there's homework assignments as well. And so, yeah, I would say it was tough, but got through it. And I'm glad Kellogg kind of had this flexible thing where you can take quarters off, and people do it. And so I remember taking a quarter off during the summer to like just get my health back up, mental and physical, and it was a well needed break, but I was still able to get everything done in 2 years. So I'm happy about
Right, and still work.
and still work. Yeah.
Incredible. So working at McMaster comes to kind of its natural conclusion, and then you move over to JBN. And that's more of a local kind of a firm versus like a Deloitte. And how have you seen some of that difference there?
Yeah, I think the facts, right, would dictate kind of some of the style of work that we take on, right? We can't send an army of people to do massive implementations, but we do. Our people a lot of them have Big Four experience. Given our local feel, how well we know our clients, we are more geared towards kind of shorter term, more strategic projects. It's also because it's about 100 and some change people. You get to know everybody.
Yeah.
And, for me, I never really understood what community really meant, I think, until I spent some serious time with JVN, where it's encouraged to spend a good bit of your mental bandwidth, your work time to really get into the community, know the community, work with people that live here in Atlanta, or work here in Atlanta. And yeah, Deloitte used to say, like, big firm, small firm feel sometimes, but small firm feel is you can call somebody up quite easily, and everybody just knows each other.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And so we'll switch gears a bit here, and I really want to get into kind of the art side of your life. And right now, I think online, a lot of folks may know you as Xiao on Instagram, and you have kind of a thriving influence, I think, growing around the art community. Can you talk a little bit, and maybe I can pull up and share some of your artwork here, but what kind of artwork that you put together, and then we'll talk about how you started to get into art as well.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, art means a whole lot to me. I'm willing to, especially in the beginning, I kind of created an entire alter ego about it, because when you're starting out, there's so much uncertainty, I think, about it. All I knew was, when I first started painting, that I loved it. I felt the longest continuous flow state that I've ever experienced in life, and it just felt like the right thing to do constantly. And so, but the skill necessarily in the beginning wasn't there. I think I saw promise. I thought I had taste from my years of photography. So I felt the necessity of creating kind of an alter ego of Xiao, which is my birth name, that means courage in Chinese. And so I was able to have the courage to share my work under an alter ego, because I would think, okay, all right, so if maybe Ryan is not willing to share his art because he has high ego, and if somebody attacks his art, he's going to feel attacked. But if I had this alter ego that could create work, and I'm starting out, like, what would this artist be like, and how would they care if somebody kind of poo-pooed all over the art or felt like an imposter? They wouldn't feel this. They would just go on and courageously, fearlessly, and kind of carve their path as things kind of go on. And so yeah, I consider myself an abstract expressionist. I use a lot of emotion, big gesture, small gesture. I combine a lot of randomness in my work, combined with, I would call it, pretty deliberate design. But anybody that's tried painting, especially abstracts, will know that it's an ongoing dialogue between you and the canvas itself. And what I really mean by that is, when you do an action, you put down a gesture, some color, a line, a shape, and etc. You get to see that all happen in real time, because you're doing that. That sounds obvious, but when you're seeing it materialize as you're painting, that's a feedback loop that goes, I would say, in your mind, if I may, in your soul, in the way that you're feeling, and that loop just continues to go on until the direction is complete. And the direction is always going to be, well, not always, but sometimes it's quite circuitous. It's not always clear, and it's like a living thing, because you are living and you're manifesting something, and so it's changing kind of constantly before your eyes as you paint. And so that's kind of, I guess, my philosophy towards starting art and painting a little bit.
And so, how did you even work up to your first painting? I doodle a little bit, but it's just smiley faces on phone calls. So how did you take kind of, maybe a feeling to, hey, I want to put something on a canvas, to actually, going out buying supplies? Were they just in your house, or can you take us back to really that first time of like, hey, honey, I'm gonna go paint,
Yeah.
Explore this.
So I bet this might resonate with you too, because I think, as I've watched you progress in your career and the things that you've done, it's like, when you have an idea or something, and you want to experiment with something, you want to do it with a good amount of gusto, right? It's not like, I'm the kind of person that if I like to encourage that curiosity of the little kid inside of me, and given kind of where we're at in life, we don't have to necessarily, just do crayons and paper. We can probably afford to, invest in our curiosities much more. And I think that's the total difference. So if I were to take you back, it was like, oh, we need we need paintings in our house, and holy snap, this stuff online that I love and I feel like conveys so much meaning to me is so expensive. Like 5, 6,000, 10,000, $20,000 for a really wonderful abstract that speaks to me. I was like, okay, oh, cool, I can buy a print, but then does that have kind of that power, that magic, that the first time the artist kind of manifested into life? Does that still exist within the print? And for me, I think it decided, and for others, it might be there still, but for me, it didn't. And so I thought, okay, well, shoot, I cannot afford the paintings that I want. Why not kind of take the opportunity to see if I can do something? I've always thought that through a very minuscule amount of success through photography, and what I mean by that is maybe a compliment or two from my friends, that I can maybe try to paint abstract. And it's that naive kid in me that thought I could do it. And so I went to a store, I bought a 60 by 48. That's a pretty sizable piece of canvas. I'm like their complete newbie, asking like, hey, can you help me pick out some paints? And is like Golden, which is a brand of paints, is like, this is a decent brand? They're like, dude, that's like the brand. That's like high pigmentation. It's good stuff. Go have fun. And so I came home with this huge canvas and like I laid it down in my basement gym, and I started laying down. So I had an idea of like, oh, I want these shapes and I want to have these things on it. And I just started painting, and I just I couldn't stop smiling. Now, was the painting good? Not by any objective sense. I think the composition itself was okay, but I just remember, and I'll never forget this feeling of like how fun it was, like how much it was just like a personal release. I just felt like I was missing this my whole life, and then I can do this, and I didn't want to stop doing it. And at the end of it, I was pretty proud of it. It's still in my, I've certainly painted much more technically proficient pieces, but this is the piece that kind of sits on top of a fireplace, and still very proud of it, from like a, wow, I can't believe I did it, and just continue to paint, and we'll continue to paint as time goes on.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I mean, it kind of sounds like you got something in the back of your head where you're like, I want to try this. I want to see what this is like. And then, stepping out of your comfort zone and going to the art store and just saying like, hey guys, I'm going to try this. Can you help me figure out where to start? And then oftentimes, I feel like in personal relationships in life, it's like, we kind of have this vision of who we are, how we're conveying that to our close friends and family, and to kind of step out of that a little bit, a little scary. And if you haven't done it yet, I mean, even with this podcast, like I'm not telling too many people about it. Like I'm not bragging yet. I'm just not as comfortable with it. And so it's kind of like that with, I feel like art. It's like, hey, let's go try this and put it together and see how you feel. And if you like it, you start telling a few people, and kind of gain that confidence as you go along. Is that kind of how you felt going through this process?
Yeah, definitely. I think whereas you see me share works all the time now, there's always that nagging kind of insecurity of how can this work be better? And on my worst days, I can see some of my paintings that I used to love and be like, what? Like I can definitely do better than that. I could have expressed these things more clearly here. Where I thought this old technique used to be awesome is no longer kind of has that magic. On my best days, I'm not so harsh on myself. But yeah, I think the process to get to sharing is certainly something that's very vulnerable. And I'm sure that this, again, you experimenting different things means you're putting a bit of yourself out there in the world, and opening yourself up. I can say in the business sphere, we're probably quite confident because we have good education, we have a lot of experience, we have a lot of expertise, and it's hard to deny those things. But when you're starting something new and you haven't reached that kind of level of expertise, confidence, and etc., taking that first step to put yourself out there in the world is certainly daunting. And so I am super lucky to have had one of my most influential mentors that I found at JVN. And when we were chatting about consulting things, I mentioned like I couldn't help it. I was trying to repress my passion for art, but that's like kind of what I'm thinking about all the time. And so it's going to come out in conversation. And I mentioned like, look, I'm interested in painting. I want to do stuff like I like paint stuff like this on the weekends. And she was like, oh, I'm an artist too.
Oh.
And I started feeling more confident and more comfortable sharing like, oh, look, these are some pieces that I've done. And she's like, these are awesome. I'm like, okay, all right, I'm still not sure if I want to share any of this stuff. But it eventually get to a point where she's like, Ryan, you need to get your art out there in the world. And it clicked for me one time where I painted her this piece and I wanted to gift it to her, and I was bringing it in a public place, and people were asking about it. So she's like, "Oh, that's a nice piece. Who's the artist?" And she's like, "The artist is right there." And then she's like, "Okay." The waitress was asking, "Well, what's your Instagram handle?" I'm like, I don't have an Instagram handle. I'm not legit. No, I don't like this is I like just do that. This is for fun, even though inside I'm like, I really love painting. I just want to tell the whole world, like, look, I want to declare myself as an artist. I want to paint. This is something that I really love doing. And I think that moment really clicked for me, where my mentor had been encouraging me to share my art for a while. And then when I got a tiny bit of validation, I knew it was probably time to put myself out there in the world, regardless of what people thought. And you can still tell that I put a hedge out there, which is I went out in the world through an alter ego. To kind of get started, but yeah, a long way of answering the question of it's hard at the beginning.
No, I think it's amazing, man, and powerful to have those mentors that give you a little encouragement, right? And help you gain some of that confidence to start to explore that other side and put yourself out there. And it can be in a meeting in the business world, someone junior just encouraging them, or someone following their passion, and just liking someone's video, like sharing it. Frankly, like that
helps a lot. Yeah,
it does. It means a lot. It's something very small, but as someone who's putting content out there, or putting their art or themselves out there, that can like mean they have another boost of energy for the next 3 months to keep chasing it, versus just kind of sitting and by yourself and not hearing any feedback there.
Yeah, art is meant to be seen, for sure.
Definitely. All right, so Ryan, I'm the guy who goes to a museum and I'm like, I don't know what I'm looking at. And I think there's a lot of us, and probably particularly a lot of like, type A traditional folks who don't have that education, or haven't ever been, really taught how to look at and interpret art. What are maybe some tips there you can share for folks that, are looking at, maybe your art or someone else's, to say, is this good or not? Is that even like a way to look at art? How do you interpret someone's artwork?
Yeah, certainly. And I think the key word here is, that's pretty important, I think. And I would say that the number one suggestion I would give even myself and anybody else when they're kind of looking at a piece of art is just to take your time. Really, I think there's some statistic out there that's like, even at museums, people pass by masterpieces, in like a couple seconds, and that's really not enough time to really appreciate the work. And a lot of that might be because your mental dialogue is like, I have no idea what the hell I'm looking at. And that's fair. But I promise, if you just look at the art for more than a few minutes, your brain will start doing things for you. Just notice things, right? Notice the colors. Notice the lines. Are they hard lines? Are there implied soft lines? Notice the textures, the brush strokes, right? Of its directionality, size, weight. Is when you start looking at them, then basically breaking down a composition into its elements, you'll start to appreciate, I think, how one is how intentional, how difficult, and how much is behind a piece of work. Now, if we're talking about a minimalist work, imagine everything I just said happens up here, right? If it's truly, I don't know if this is a word, but reducing it to its elements. So I think that's the first tip I would say, and then that's just one of the, let's call it the tip of the iceberg. Then when you start to understand why that piece is in the museum or why it has weight or carries weight in the art canon, then we're going really, really, really deep, because that can be a lifetime journey. You're never going to finish that journey. So if you were to kind of follow the history of how art arrived to abstract expressionism, that is fascinating to me. And I'm a newbie. I'm still learning the depths of all these things. But I think art has something to offer for everyone, whether it's representational, abstract, whatever it might mean. A lot of people were very confused where there was, I think, a multi-million-dollar, I might be botching this a lot, of a duct tape banana on a wall, right, piece. I think it was called The Comedian. And people are outraged, right, of, oh, why is this art? There are people that dedicate their life doing hyper-realism. It is because when you don't understand, the artist, who's Maurizio Catalan, and his oeuvre and what makes him so brilliant, is your outrage and its social media impact is a part of the art. And when you start to understand that, like, when your reaction is what the artist actually intended to do, or it's taken on its life of its own, then the meaning of art kind of becomes so much more profound for you. And I think most pieces that are considered great have that level of depth, both from a storytelling, from a how meaningful it is to shifting the art world. Those elements all might be there. And so I would start with just pausing, look at the art for a really long time, let your brain do some work. And if you're more curious about it, let your brain just go down that rabbit hole. And there's just so much to appreciate.
No, I love how you talk about this. You can tell there's a passion in your voice around art and kind of being a student of the format. And so kind of my takeaway here is, as you're looking at maybe a new painting or composition for the first time, almost look at it and try to understand how it was put together. And you talk about kind of the brush strokes and how the direction of them and starting to think about that. I'm almost, envisioning maybe the artists themselves painting it. If I'm in the room, like, let me try to figure out how they painted it and maybe some of the decisions behind it. And that's probably enough to intrigue me to start to learn more. But as you dig deeper into, maybe that artist background and kind of the style of it, there's a whole lot more to unpack. And almost don't judge yourself for not knowing why it's important, right? That's maybe my first thing is, like, I know nothing, so I'm not going to bother because I'll look silly trying to interpret it because I don't know enough, right?
No one, yeah. Let me touch on that real quick. I think that's one of the great. It makes me kind of sad to hear that, but I also know why. The art world and the way that people write about art, I think the reason why it's so pedantic and complicated is because there are levels to the talent that people can write about art or describe it or curate, and they're basically having an arms race to make it more and more, that kind of flavor of language that makes it really intimidating and difficult. And it's necessary for them because that's just how that industry, I suppose, works in a certain perspective. It's like if you have two people with PhDs and they're having a dialogue, or they're like in charge of their department. When we listen to them talk, it might be really difficult because we don't have a PhD in that subject matter, and that's totally to be understood. But I have to give myself grace, and I feel like everybody should give themselves grace when they're letting art influence them, or letting the art kind of do something to them. And I think you have to be willing to let down your barriers quite a bit. And I think especially with abstracts, for that to happen. Because if you go in and say, it's 3 colors on a piece of canvas, that will literally be all that it is to you. But then if you start thinking, okay, shoot, all right, what is Mark Rothko's life actually like? And he's trying to give you this religious experience. Okay, well, in what ways might that be true? Okay, all right, the scale of the painting is huge. The way that these colors are blended is actually quite smooth in these areas. Or maybe this area doesn't look so, when you start kind of allowing yourself to feel the art, yes, you can break it down to, oh, how might they have painted this? But a lot of the ways it's like, oh, how does this kind of element make me feel? Or how did the artist intend for this piece to make me feel? And then you're starting to just have this exchange. And I think this is why, at least this is for me, why I love art so much, is because this kind of happens.
No, I love that. So Ryan, as you're digging more into art and really exploring this as your passion, you recently, I think, acquired a small studio where you're maybe not painting up your basement gym anymore, and your wife kicked you out. But can you talk about how you've really started to invest in the passion, and why you invested in a studio itself? And I think you're in it right now. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sitting in my sanctuary. Yeah, so I think I've been in a fortunate position, right, where I could, one is when I was in my basement, yeah, there's paint everywhere. So there's like paint on the floors, there's paint on the ceilings, there's paint on like the louvers of the blinds, or whatever those things are called. Yeah. And then I also just ran out of space. So one was I was tracking paint everywhere on the hardwood floors. That's not good. And then of course I care about that place, and so I'm like spending too much time cleaning. But I'm also just like a messy person in general. So there's a lot of practical reasons, I think, to move into the studio. But to me also, it's just like I kind of live by the principle of I'm trying to live my best life now, not tomorrow, now. And if I have the means to do it, then I want to be able to experience those things. Why? Yes, delayed gratification is one of the keys to success, but I can experience what I define as success today. And one of those things is being able to freely paint in my own space. Now, am I hyper privileged to be able to do so? Yeah, absolutely. But I think a couple things financially made sense for me. One is Atlanta real estate, as I'm sure you know, should be a pretty decent investment. And so when I had the means to do so, I also wanted to diversify my financial portfolio outside of stocks into more real estate. And so I saw an opportunity to do that whilst being able to stoke the fires of my passion. And so, made it happen. And we can get into the mechanics of that if that is interest to kind of your listeners. But from the practical sense, it made a lot of financial and passion sense to invest in a studio to paint in.
That's awesome. And within the studio, can you talk about how you set it up, and kind of the size of it, and how you take advantage of it? Are you there nightly, or how often are you there?
I wish. So I wish I was here nightly. It really depends. I'm here at least every weekend, unless I'm on vacation. Nightly would be difficult given I still am working, and that requires me to rev my brain pretty hot. And so typically I need to veg out and chill out at the end of each night. And in painting, while it is kind of relaxing in a way, I put on a lot of pressure for myself to paint. And so I'm not super confident that I can always whip out the flow. Now I do like sometimes like sketch in a doodle book, but I won't do that necessarily in the studio itself. So the studio is it's a loft in a reconverted, I think it was used to be a grocery warehouse. High ceilings, about 1,000 square feet ish. It's basically a condo. And then I'm sitting in the living room, which is cleared out for me to paint. And so that's a little bit about the actual space itself.
That's awesome, man. One thing I definitely see the theme here in your life is, as you find a passion, you're very self-motivated and driven, and you kind of tackle it 110%, and really invest in that to, like you said, kind of live your life now rather than, when you're 60.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, definitely. It's, I don't even know if I have a choice. It's just, I've gone very deep into passions, many of which have fizzled out. And I'm like super happy that this one has been sustainable. Yeah.
And Ryan, where do you kind of see yourself taking kind of the artwork? I know you're selling some of your art online. You're attending art shows. Can you talk about maybe some of the business side of this and how you want to explore growing art within your life?
Yeah, I want to say I want to grow it organically, but that might be a cop-out answer. I'm not too sure yet. So the way that I think about it, at least currently, and maybe I'm over intellectualizing this, is if I have a full-time job, it means I can basically create and do whatever I want, including if I don't want to paint a project, I don't have to. I don't. If I want to just do what I want to do, I can do that. If I sell pieces here and there, I'm proud of myself and I'm really happy. And so I see that balance right now to be quite good. But I am also, there is a curiosity within me that desires to see where this can potentially go. And if it grows bigger and bigger and bigger, then yeah, I'd love to be able to follow to its logical conclusion. I ultimately see my legacy, and we were kind of talking about this before, where if you're mentoring somebody, that is something that's always going to be a part of you. And then if you have been mentored, same sort of deal. So for me, I think paintings has like lasting staying power, both because it captures a moment in time for me, but also for whoever's collecting it. These paintings will outlast us, and hopefully the collector values it enough to keep on passing it down. And so that gives me, that kind of solves, if we're kind of talking about like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we're talking about kind of the top pyramid of self-actualization, then this kind of checks the box for me. So I'm super happy that it does. And whether it's I'm world famous someday, that's not really necessarily the goal. I would say I'm very happy to be living the dream now.
Yeah, I love that. And to wrap up here, Ryan, what are maybe some tips you have for folks that are looking to explore some of their passions? I feel like you've figured out a way to really invest in those passions. So what is maybe advice you have for folks that are wanting to find a passion or already have a passion but really want to dig deeper into that? Maybe 2 or 3 tips there.
Yeah, okay. I think it's having, so this might sound ironic, but I think it's about having the confidence to have no ego. It just giving yourself the permission to go and try things. It doesn't have to be your identity in the beginning, but be aware of how it makes you feel, and that would mirror kind of my spark, I would call it, in the beginning. And then I think the rest kind of just takes care of itself, because you just want to continuously get better, do it, share it. And then that's kind of the momentum that has been sustaining what I love to do. That's
Love
just
that,
one
man.
thing. Yeah, I don't know if I can think of 2 others.
all good. We're unscripted interview here. No questions ahead of time. Well, Ryan, this is amazing. I really appreciate your time here. And just kind of, I love how you're able to kind of pair a very successful professional life and invest kind of that passion also into your artwork and growing that. And if people want to get in touch with you and kind of see your artwork, where's the best place where they can find you?
Yeah, so Instagram is probably the best place. My handle's on the screen, Life of Xiao. That's where I post pretty regularly. If anybody's interested in watching my process, I post a lot of process videos of how I create my abstract pieces. And I do have a website. It's A1, the number one of one.com. I do not keep it as updated as I should, but I promise someday I will. There, you can buy pieces off there, but honestly, my most updated kind of body of work is on my Instagram. If anybody's interested in asking questions about art, about what the commissions process is like, or about getting started in art, whatever it might be, I'm an art evangelist. I've had a lot of people kind of help me out, both your professional career, my art career as well, and so I'm happy to pay it back at any point in time.
Amazing. Well, if anyone made it this far, I appreciate you watching and learning from Ryan here. If you have any questions, leave a comment for him and be sure to subscribe. Check him out on Instagram. Ryan, I'll put all the links here and we'll post this everywhere and try to get you some more, believers of art here. Ryan, I really appreciate it, and we'll have to get together here soon, man.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Nick.
Cool. Take care.
Bye.